Greetings and welcome for all of you who are tuned in. You're watching TMH and this is our daily English news. Our headlines for today: Tigrayan forces disengaging from the battlefronts as part of the agreement signed in Pretoria. There are unconfirmed reports that Eritrean forces have been blocking humanitarian aid and staff into the Tigray region, and joint committee of the Ethiopian government and Tigray forces convened inside the Tigray region. As we move on to our updates, Tigrayan forces disengaging from the battlefronts as part of the agreement signed in Pretoria, South Africa. Let's take a listen. Timnit Bayru has further details.
Tigray Defense Forces have started disengaging from different battlefronts. Disengaging is underway in Zalambasa, Maiqanatal, Agumberda, Nabalet, Berutaklai, Abargale, and Chachar fronts. Tigray Military Command says disengagement is taking place according to Article 6 of the peace deal signed in Pretoria between the Ethiopian government and the TPLF. Higher military officials of the Tigrayan forces say the disengagement shows commitment on their side to a peaceful end to the deadliest conflict that inflicted the death of 500,000 civilians. They say their forces are withdrawing happily. We don't choose war over peace. We are a people's army and paying sacrifice to ensure human and democratic rights of our people are respected. We took up arms as a last resort as war was imposed on us. Now that negotiation has started in a peaceful and civilized manner, not only do we accept the peace process, but we will also pay all the necessary sacrifice to make sure it is implemented without obstacles. Fighters from the Tigrayan forces on their side stated that peace is in the best interest of the people of Tigray. We came to the mountains to ensure the peace and security of our people. We are again leaving the front lines for the sake of peace, a fighter in Zalambasa front told Tigray television. The people of Tigray have been calling for peace from day one. The people were voicing their call for respect to the constitution and for an end to the identity-based attacks. The people and members of the army have therefore embraced peace.
Thank you, Timnit. As Tigray forces continue to disengage, there are unconfirmed reports that Eritrean forces have blocked humanitarian staff and aid that were heading to central and northwestern Tigray. According to these reports, the humanitarian workers were destined to end up in Adwa, Aksum, Shura in Tigray region, and the reports indicated that the blockade happened within the last 2 days in the area located between Adi and Adwa. The Joint Committee of the Ethiopian government and Tigrayan forces has convened inside the Tigray region for the first time. The meeting joint committee is in line with the cessation of hostilities agreement as well as the implementation declaration signed in the 2-year conflict. Ethiopia's government communication services said in a tweet that the committee started working on Wednesday in the town of Shura, and it is the first time both sides have officially held these talks inside of Ethiopia since the fighting began in November 2020. According to the agreement, Ethiopia's government is responsible to make sure forces from Eritrea and the neighboring Amhara region are completely out of Tigray, and neither of the two forces is part of the peace deal. Last week, the African Union envoy helping to mediate the talks between the two parties, Olusegun Obasanjo, openly called for the withdrawal of foreign troops. Sources inside Tigray have alleged to the Associated Press that the allies of the Ethiopian military are looting and carrying out mass arrests inside this region. In other news, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who was on a visit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, who met with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Guterres said Ethiopia's conflict has seen more casualties than the war in Ukraine itself. Estimates by some health workers and academics say hundreds and thousands of people have been killed. And after Guterres met with Ethiopia's Prime Minister in Addis Ababa, the UN said Guterres is fully committed to mobilizing the entire UN system to provide humanitarian support to all of those who may need it within the Tigray and Ethiopian region. UN officials says the Ethiopian government Tigray agreement's opportunity must be seized to include rights and needs of children affected by this conflict. Special Representative of the UN Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict, Virginia Gamba, said the agreement for lasting peace through permanent cessation of hostilities in Ethiopia, brokered by the African Union, is a milestone that provides an important opportunity to prioritize the protection of all children. She indicated that this can be done by incorporating their rights and needs in the mediation process as well as the peace discussions. This agreement must now urgently be translated into concrete improvements for civilians on the ground, including children by accelerating the facilitation of humanitarian access, the protection of children, and the restoration of all essential services such as education, health, mental health, and psychosocial support, particularly for children. The special representative also urged that all of those involved in peace discussions include child protection provisions such as securing the immediate and unconditional release of any child associated with parties to this conflict and prioritizing their reintegration assistance as well. She reminded that the practical guidance for mediators to protect children in situation of armed conflict developed by her office provided useful tools to allow children to be placed at the center of peace processes, adding that the government of Ethiopia has been engaging with her office on the importance of protecting children from conflict, as well as ending and preventing grave violations against them, and encouraged all parties to engage in similar efforts. Children in Ethiopia have seen their fundamental rights violated over the past 2 years, and in addition to the dire humanitarian crisis facing the country, making boys and girls increasingly vulnerable to the grave violations and climate emergencies happening currently within the entirety of Ethiopia. That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.